at the historic Biltmore estate, my sister destroyed everything. I am Melody, 28 years old, standing in my wedding dress while my own flesh and blood approached the floral arch with a sinister smile. She pressed herself closely against my side and slipped a thick manila envelope directly into my trembling hands. Without a second of hesitation, she lowered her voice into a chilling whisper and delivered a direct threat. If you do not sign over your inheritance rights to the 5 condos immediately, I will make sure this wedding is canceled right now. To prove she was not making an empty threat, she pulled out a few photos from the envelope. She promised to scatter those disgusting fabricated images across the venue to completely ruin my reputation in front of my future in-laws. The initial shock that paralyzed my body was quickly replaced by an overwhelming wave of absolute fury. I suddenly realized that the person who shared my blood was cruel enough to use such a filthy extortion tactic just to steal my rightful property. I swallowed my panic and made a firm decision about how to handle this ultimate betrayal. I would walk straight up to the main stage, grab the microphone, and make 3 clear announcements to the entire crowd. I knew that the moment I finished my very first sentence, the smug look on my sister's face would completely disappear and turn pale. If you love hearing about toxic family members getting the harsh reality check they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now. Keep watching to see exactly how I flip the script and punish this shameless extortionist right in front of all our wedding guests. Standing paralyzed on the lush green grass of the estate, my mind was involuntarily pulled back into the distant past where the seeds of jealousy and greed in this family first began to take root. Many years ago, my parents realized they needed a concrete plan to protect their hard-earned assets from being completely squandered by reckless behavior. Mom and Dad ultimately decided to establish a legally binding trust fund to leave the entire management and ownership of 5 lucrative rental condominiums in the downtown area strictly under my control. This difficult financial decision did not come out of nowhere, but stemmed directly from observing my sister Felicity displaying a persistently irresponsible lifestyle over a very long period. She possessed an astonishing ability to rack up massive credit card debts while carelessly wasting every single dollar our family ever provided to help her build a stable life. Mom and Dad spent countless nights agonizing over those unpaid bills before finally accepting the harsh reality that handing her any substantial property would simply lead to immediate bankruptcy. That logical division of assets instantly became a massive thorn in Felicity's side and fundamentally warped her perception of reality. Instead of reflecting on her own disastrous financial choices, she fully embraced a perpetual victim mentality to justify her escalating bitterness toward my success. She constantly convinced herself and anyone willing to listen that I had maliciously manipulated our parents behind closed doors to steal the inheritance she believed rightfully belonged to her. Her toxic narrative completely ignored the countless times I had personally bailed her out of debt before the trust was even finalized. Every time she looked at me managing those 5 condos successfully, her eyes burned with an intense resentment that made any rational conversation absolutely impossible. Because of this deep-seated delusion, our traditional holiday gatherings rapidly deteriorated into nothing more than exhausting battlegrounds filled with screaming matches and thrown plates. What should have been warm family dinners inevitably transformed into bitter verbal confrontations, where Felicity would loudly demand an equal share of the condominium revenues. I always stood my ground by calmly reminding her about the strict legal boundaries established by the trust documents our parents signed. My logical responses only fueled her irrational rage further, while turning our blood relationship into a fragile transaction characterized by extreme caution and mutual suspicion. We could no longer sit in the same room without carefully analyzing every single word spoken to avoid triggering another explosive meltdown regarding the downtown properties. During one particularly disastrous Thanksgiving dinner shortly after the trust was officially enacted, Felicity actually slammed her fists onto the dining table to demand I immediately liquidate one of the condos to pay off her newest luxury car loan. When I explicitly refused her outrageous request by citing our parents' exact legal wishes, she stormed out of the house while screaming curses that echoed throughout the entire neighborhood. That specific holiday disaster firmly cemented the realization that she viewed me not as a loving sister, but merely as an obstacle blocking her access to an endless supply of unearned wealth. Realizing that her toxic presence was actively destroying my mental peace, I made the conscious decision to maintain a very strict physical and emotional distance from her over the last few years. Limiting our interactions to brief phone calls on birthdays and strictly surface-level conversations during unavoidable family events seemed like the only way to prevent any further escalation of her aggressive financial demands. My genuine belief was that establishing these firm boundaries would eventually force her to accept reality and perhaps motivate her to build her own career instead of coveting my responsibilities. Focusing entirely on maintaining the properties to the highest standard possible allowed me to build a beautiful life alongside a partner who truly respected my independence and hard work. Never in my wildest nightmares did I expect that the profound hatred accumulating inside her for years would eventually mutate into a filthy extortion plot executing right in the middle of the most important day of my entire life. The sheer cruelty of utilizing fabricated evidence to threaten my impending marriage just to extort those specific 5 condos proved that the greedy person I grew up with had completely lost whatever remaining humanity she once possessed. Exactly 1 week before this monumental day, unsettling signs began to surface while my fiancé, Arthur, was incredibly busy finalizing the final venue paperwork at the estate. Out of absolutely nowhere, Felicity suddenly displayed an overwhelmingly enthusiastic attitude regarding the upcoming nuptials, which felt completely unusual for someone who historically despised my success. She actively volunteered to arrive early to help the event coordinators decorate the luxurious bridal suite with elaborate floral arrangements. I was genuinely shocked when she arrived alongside her new boyfriend, a professional photographer named Ruben, boldly claiming he wanted to scout the historic location to find the absolute best natural lighting for the impending outdoor ceremony. My internal alarms immediately started ringing with deafening volume when I repeatedly caught Ruben acting incredibly strangely around the sprawling property. Instead of capturing the beautiful architecture or analyzing the elegant floral setups like a normal professional would naturally do, he was constantly sneaking unauthorized photographs of me from deliberately obscured angles whenever he thought my attention was diverted elsewhere. While he was busy treating me like an unsuspecting target through his long camera lens, Felicity was persistently hovering around my personal belongings while casually dropping highly intrusive questions regarding the specific legal documents and management structures for my downtown properties. The overall situation grew significantly more concerning later that same afternoon, while we were reviewing the final catering guest list together in the massive main dining hall. Arthur gently pulled my hand to step away from the busy event coordinators, while his brow furrowed with deep suspicion. He leaned in close to my ear to whisper a very serious warning about our unusual guests. I feel like the way Ruben looks at you is not like a professional photographer at all, so you really need to be careful around them. Hearing those exact concerns spoken out loud by the man I trusted most completely validated my own growing paranoia about the entire increasingly bizarre situation. My intuition violently warned me that a catastrophic event was quietly brewing right under our noses while we were entirely distracted by the exhausting wedding preparations. I decided to take immediate, preemptive action to protect myself from whatever malicious scheme they were secretly concocting behind my back. Without telling anyone else about my defensive strategy to avoid causing unnecessary panic, I purchased a highly advanced hidden camera equipped with motion sensors and remote cloud storage capabilities. I waited patiently until the venue was completely empty before secretly installing the tiny recording device directly inside the dense floral arrangement positioned strategically in the corner of the bridal suite. That discreet security measure proved to be absolutely vital just 2 days later when I returned to the dressing room entirely unexpectedly to retrieve my phone. I silently pushed open the heavy wooden door to find Felicity frantically rummaging through my personal leather tote bag where I normally kept my sensitive identification and banking paperwork. I crossed my arms defensively while staring directly at her intrusive hands to ask a freezing question that instantly pierced the quiet room. What exactly are you desperately searching for inside my personal handbag without asking for my permission? The sudden sound of my stern voice caused her to flinch violently while she hastily dropped my wallet back into the open compartment as if she had been burned. She began stammering a completely incoherent excuse about desperately searching for some extra safety pins for her rehearsal dress before hastily scurrying out of the room without making a single second of eye contact. That profound display of guilty behavior served as the ultimate confirmation that a truly terrible plan was being silently woven in the shadows, just waiting to spring closed and trap me on my wedding day. Immediately after that chilling threat involving the photos, I politely requested a moment to return to the bridal suite to retouch my makeup, leaving behind her triumphant and arrogant gaze. The second I clicked the heavy oak door shut behind me, my carefully constructed facade of calmness completely shattered into a million sharp pieces. My hands were trembling uncontrollably as I fumbled with my phone to open the encrypted cloud application connected to the tiny hidden camera I had installed earlier. I felt a wave of cold dread washing over me while the loading icon spun, knowing that whatever I was about to witness would change the course of my life forever. I rapidly rewound the recorded footage from the previous afternoon and felt a physical surge of nausea when the screen displayed a crystal-clear image of Felicity and Ruben huddled intensely over a glowing laptop screen. They were sitting right here in this very room, surrounded by my wedding flowers while they meticulously plotted my ultimate downfall with terrifying precision. Felicity's malicious voice hissed through the tiny phone speakers, sounding incredibly sharp and filled with a brand of cruelty that I never thought possible from a sibling. Make sure you edit Melody's face so she looks absolutely scandalous in these shots, because this single image needs to be powerful enough to make Arthur's family cancel the wedding immediately. Ruben let out a dismissive and chilling laugh, while the rhythmic clicking of his keyboard echoed throughout the silent recording as he worked on his digital deception. You really need to stay calm, because with my professional editing skills, absolutely nobody will be able to tell this is a fake photo, and those 5 condos will belong to you before the sun sets tomorrow. The sheer audacity of their plan made my head spin with a mixture of disbelief and profound disgust at their absolute lack of any moral compass. Tears began to stream down my face involuntarily, not because I was paralyzed by fear or intimidation, but because of the bone-chilling pain of being systematically betrayed by my own flesh and blood. It was a soul-crushing realization that my sister was willing to destroy my reputation and steal my livelihood just to satisfy her own bottomless pit of greed. She wasn't just trying to take my property. She was attempting to humiliate me in front of everyone I loved while laughing about the wreckage she planned to leave behind. I stared at my pale and ghostly reflection in the ornate vanity mirror, while the muffled sounds of the wedding orchestra drifted through the walls like a cruel joke. I took several deep and jagged breaths to reclaim my internal strength, refusing to let those 2 vultures see me as a weak and broken victim of their scheme. I reached for a tissue to carefully wipe away every single trace of my tears before picking up my favorite tube of vibrant red lipstick to repaint my lips with a bold and defiant color. This wasn't just a wedding anymore. It was a battleground, and I was now armed with the absolute truth that would eventually crush their despicable conspiracy into the dust. I straightened my white lace veil and stood up, with a newfound sense of cold determination, ready to walk back out there to deliver a performance they would never forget. 15 minutes later, I pushed open the heavy bridal suite door with a surge of newfound power to walk confidently across the manicured lawn toward the central stage, with a microphone gripped firmly in my hand. Every single eye in the massive congregation followed my deliberate movements, while the soft orchestral music gradually faded into an expectant and heavy silence. When I finally reached the elevated platform, Felicity was standing prominently in the very front row, with her arms crossed tightly over her chest while wearing a smug and triumphant smile. She looked absolutely certain that I was about to surrender to her demands, clearly believing that she had finally trapped me in a corner with no possible way of escape. Refusing to let her enjoy even one more second of her delusional victory, I made a sharp signal to the technical crew to connect my personal phone directly to the massive LED screen erected in the middle of the estate. I took a deep and stabilizing breath before projecting my voice through the speakers to make a bold announcement that instantly electrified the entire atmosphere. Today, instead of the traditional vows you were all expecting to hear, I feel it is absolutely necessary to show everyone the truth about a disgusting extortion plot happening right here. The sharp and crystal clear recording from my hidden camera began to play across the giant screen, allowing the malicious voices of Felicity and Reuben to be exposed nakedly before hundreds of shocked wedding guests. Every cruel word they had spoken about fabricating those scandalous photos echoed throughout the historic grounds with devastating clarity for everyone to hear. I watched the arrogant smile on Felicity's face vanish instantly, to be replaced by a ghastly and pale expression of pure terror, as she realized her private malice was now public knowledge. The guests began to erupt in a chaotic wave of gasps and outraged whispers while they witnessed the true nature of the woman standing in the front row. While the crowd was still reeling from the shocking revelation on the screen, Arthur immediately stepped up from his seat to join me on the stage without a single moment of hesitation. He gripped my hand with an incredible strength that reminded me I was no longer fighting this battle alone against my toxic family. He deliberately positioned his tall frame directly between me and the prying eyes of the audience, as if he were a living shield protecting my dignity. He looked directly down at the stunned congregation to deliver a firm and unwavering declaration that resonated with a powerful sense of conviction. Not a single filthy tactic or piece of garbage photography could ever make me stop trusting my wife, because I know exactly who she is and what she stands for. His thunderous statement acted like a spark to a dry field, causing the entire audience to erupt in a spontaneous and deafening round of applause to support our resilience. People stood up from their chairs to cheer for our bond, while casting looks of absolute loathing toward the two people who had tried to destroy us with such a pathetic scheme. The overwhelming warmth from the guests served as a powerful confirmation that our love was far stronger than any manufactured scandal designed to tear us apart. Standing there beside my husband, I felt a profound sense of triumph, knowing that the light of truth had finally burned away the shadows of their greed. Immediately after that, before the thunderous applause from the wedding guests could even fade, the stunned silence was violently torn apart by a piercing and hysterical shriek from Felicity. Completely losing her mind as her elaborate plan collapsed into ruins and her reputation was publicly shredded. She charged toward the stage like a cornered animal with her eyes wide with unbridled rage. She lunged onto the wooden platform with her fingers clawing at the air, desperately attempting to snatch the microphone away from my hands to stop the truth from spreading further. Arthur reacted with incredible speed and protective instinct, moving instantly to wrap his strong arms around me to shield my body from her erratic assault. He deliberately used his broad and steady back to absorb the impact of her frantic physical collision, while firmly pushing her back to keep her away from me. He stared down at her with a look of absolute disgust while she continued to scream incoherent insults that echoed throughout the historic grounds of the estate. "You will never get away with this, you ungrateful little brat, because I will destroy your life, one way or another." The professional security team of the Biltmore estate reacted within seconds, rushing onto the stage to form a solid and impenetrable human barrier between us and my enraged sibling. They expertly moved to restrain her while she struggled violently against their grip, eventually pinning her down onto the manicured grass to prevent any further violence or disruption. While the chaos unfolded on the stage, Ruben was overcome with pure panic as he realized the legal consequences of his digital forgeries were about to crash down on him. He attempted to slink away toward the obscured back exit behind the floral arrangements, but several sharp-eyed members of Arthur's family noticed his suspicious movements and blocked his path. They firmly grabbed his arms to ensure he could not escape the consequences of the malicious conspiracy he had helped to build against me. Right in the middle of that frantic and humiliating scene, the sharp and rhythmic wail of police sirens began to scream from the main entrance of the estate. The management of the property had already placed an emergency call to the local authorities the moment the evidence of extortion was broadcast to the entire crowd. 2 police cruisers roared up the driveway to bring an abrupt and sobering end to the chaotic confrontation unfolding on the lawn. The officers stepped out with a cold and professional efficiency to take control of the crime scene, while the lead sergeant projected his voice to address the entire assembly. "We have received a very serious formal report regarding a major extortion plot, so we require everyone involved to remain silent and cooperate fully with our investigation." The cold and metallic sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the heavy silence as the officers secured Felicity's wrists behind her back, while Ruben was also being restrained nearby. They were both led away toward the waiting patrol cars while hundreds of guests watched in absolute shock and silent judgment at their profound fall from grace. Seeing them being shoved into the back of those special law enforcement vehicles provided a deep sense of justice for the years of emotional torment and financial greed I had endured. As the car doors slammed shut with a heavy and final thud, I leaned into Arthur's shoulder while realizing that the person I once called family was finally gone from my life forever. On Monday morning, exactly 2 days after the catastrophic storm at the altar, I pushed open the heavy glass doors to enter the quiet and professional office of my lawyer, Peterson. The sterile scent of expensive leather and old paper provided a strange sense of comfort compared to the chaotic floral perfumes of the wedding venue. I sat down on the soft black leather sofa, while carefully handing over the complete collection of video evidence audio files and that original yellow envelope containing the fake photos, so Peterson could finalize the formal charges for aggravated felony extortion. He spent several minutes meticulously reviewing every digital file on his computer screen, while his expression remained professional and entirely unreadable. Finally, he looked up from the glowing monitor to meet my gaze and delivered a firm confirmation that solidified my path toward justice. With such undeniable and clear evidence of premeditated malice, a significant prison sentence for this level of extortion involving fabricated imagery is absolutely unavoidable under state law. Hearing those words from a legal expert like Peterson provided a profound sense of relief that the justice system was finally moving to protect my rights. We worked quickly together to complete the necessary paperwork to file for a permanent restraining order to ensure that Felicity and any members of Ruben's family could never harass me or Arthur again under any circumstances. I wanted to build a legal fortress around our new life together to prevent the toxic remnants of my past from ever touching our future peace. Peterson assured me that the court would likely grant the emergency order within 24 hours, given the violent outbursts that had occurred in front of hundreds of witnesses at the estate. Later that same afternoon, my phone began to vibrate incessantly on the kitchen counter with dozens of unfamiliar numbers and desperate text messages. When I finally answered one out of curiosity, I was greeted by the sobbing and frantic voices of Ruben's relatives who were begging for my mercy. Please show some compassion for our boy because Ruben only followed those terrible instructions in a moment of reckless impulsiveness, and we are pleading with you not to destroy his entire future. Their pleas for sympathy felt hollow and insulting, considering they were defending a man who had spent days meticulously editing photos to destroy my reputation and my marriage. I responded with a cold and unwavering tone that left absolutely no room for negotiation or further discussion regarding the criminal case. The moment he decided to cut and paste those disgusting images to ruin my life, he made the conscious choice to throw away his own future with his own hands. I immediately hung up the phone and blocked every single contact associated with their family to prevent any further attempts at emotional manipulation or harassment. Arthur moved quietly across the room to place his warm and steady hand on my shoulder, while offering the silent strength I needed to stay firm in my convictions. Having him as a rock-solid support system made it much easier to stay committed to this legal path of punishing their evil actions through the proper authorities. He whispered that I was doing the right thing for both of us, and that we would never look back at the people who tried to burn our world down for 5 condominiums. 8 months have passed since that life-altering day, and my phone just buzzed with a financial report showing rental profits that far exceeded the highest expectations for my 5 downtown apartments. The transition from the chaotic betrayal at the altar to this state of absolute professional and personal success has been a journey characterized by immense growth and the cold pursuit of justice. The legal system eventually delivered its final and unshakable verdict regarding the malicious plot that had attempted to destroy my wedding and my hard-earned reputation. Felicity was officially sentenced to serve 3 full years in state prison for her lead role in the aggravated extortion scheme, while Ruben received a 2-year sentence along with a permanent lifetime ban from ever working in the professional photography or digital media industries again. Knowing they are finally facing the harsh consequences of their greed has allowed a profound sense of closure to settle over my heart like a long-awaited peace. My daily life alongside Arthur is now filled with a radiant and genuine happiness that I once thought might be impossible to achieve after such a public family scandal. Our marriage has only grown stronger through the fire of that confrontation, and my real estate career is currently flourishing because I no longer have to waste a single ounce of energy worrying about a toxic sibling relationship. I have officially severed every remaining tie to the people who viewed me as nothing more than a bank account to be exploited for their own selfish gain. This newfound freedom from emotional manipulation has allowed me to focus entirely on building a legacy that reflects my own values and hard work. I often find myself standing on the sprawling balcony of our new penthouse apartment while enjoying the cool and refreshing breeze of a quiet evening. I can finally look out over the city lights and smile while permanently closing the dark door on my past shadows to fully embrace the brilliant and unlimited future waiting ahead of us. My dear friends, the dramatic journey of Melody has come to a formal conclusion here, with a truly satisfying and well-deserved ending for everyone involved in the story. From these intense events, we can clearly extract 3 profound life lessons that are incredibly relevant in our modern world. First, we must recognize that unchecked greed can easily erode and eventually destroy even the most sacred moral boundaries within a biological family. Second, the absolute and unwavering trust of a devoted partner acts as the strongest possible shield to defend against any filthy tactics of character assassination or slander. Third, modern women should never allow themselves to be perceived as weak victims, but instead should learn how to utilize the power of the law as a defensive weapon to courageously cut away toxic relationships and protect their own lives. Thank you all so much for taking the time to listen until the very final moments of this incredibly gripping story today. We genuinely appreciate your constant support and companionship throughout this entire emotional narrative. What do you personally think about the decisive and uncompromising way that Melody chose to handle her betrayal? Please leave your honest thoughts in the comments section below, and do not forget to hit the subscribe button to catch all our